So I would like, without any further delay, I would like to welcome my dear respected brothers, brother Damani Ingram and my brother Yasir Zia, inshallah. Jazakum Allahu khairan.
Wa Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Yeah, ma'am, I did see that you had a very nice looking presentation to share. I do have something that inshallah we'll share with my screen, but this is a topic that is one that many people try to avoid thinking about. We think about our estate planning or doing our wills and maybe a trust, and we avoid it as to think that if we avoid it, it's not going to happen. We don't have to worry about it if we avoid it, but it is a necessity. And especially when it comes to Muslims, trying to find out how we can have our will or our estate that is done Islamically, and yet at the same time have that will be something that can be admissible in a court in the state of Maryland and throughout the country. And what I'm going to do is see if I can share my screen and kind of go through parts of a presentation I had done before in the past, and we'll coordinate with Brother Zia and of course Imam also to get towards a really nice, effective presentation. So hold 1 minute and see if I can get this screen shared. All right, can you see?
Yes.
We see your screen.
Okay. So we do see that, this is one of our responsibilities as a Muslim is to, if any one person has something that we got to give away, we want to make sure that we have it bequeathed into a will. And one of the primary things that I think folks have questions about is what constitutes a will, and what are some of the legal requirements to get a will done. As we know that we have within our deen, we have two areas. We have one area where we're basically advised to have a will completed. If it is prescribed for each and every person, if death approaches you, that you do what? If you have any wealth to leave, that you make a bequest to your parent, your next of kin, according to reasonable manners. This is a duty upon Mutakun. So those are the believers. We have a responsibility to have something that we will pass on to our heirs that will be codified in writing. So then we think about, well, what is a will? I have folks that will ask me a question. They'll say, well, Brother Damani, what's the difference between a will or a living will? They'll ask someone, so I need a living will done. Well, there's a difference between what a living will and what actually a will is. So we need to be clear on the differences between the two. So the first, we look at what is the definition of a will. We know the will in English, they say it's a written document which leaves the estate of a person who signed it to the named beneficiaries or legatees. So these are the people that we're going to give our property to. These are the individuals that, and not only will we give property to, but we will instruct them on how our property is going to be devised out to our heirs. And then we know that as the Imam was talking about in Arabic, when we think of the will, we say the wasiya. Some definitions will say the defined definite command or obligation that is required to be put into writing. And I have here, we talk about the 1/3 portion. I believe maybe Brother Zia and Imam may go over that more during the presentation. But we have within our Islamic term will or wasiya, and we have, when we think about the secular will, the document that's going to be used to describe how our property is going to be separated and how it's going to be distributed. When we think about the goals, so there have to be two types of goals that we have. What are the goals that you'll see within the wasiya or the Islamic will? What are the goals that you see in the secular will? Well, we know within the secular will, we have our responsibility that we want to provide for our heirs, and we want to minimize the burden. Having a will is going to minimize the burden that you place upon your relative, those that come after you. Because if you don't have it in writing, it's going to be left up to the state to decide how things are going to be dispersed and distributed. Our Islamic will, it's going to be doing the same similar thing too, providing for the heirs of the decedent. Those are the folks that are going to come after you, minimize the burden, and of course, preparing our transition. So we're having things that are done as a requirement to make sure that our affairs are going to be passed on, we're going to be handled according to our beliefs, in addition to making sure that those that come after us are going to be dealt with justly. Now, when we talk about a will, this may be a question that'll come out later on, but a will itself has to be in writing. It has to be written down. It may be called a last will and testament. What a will may do, it may revoke prior wills that you've had, any other written documents that you had before within your legally admissible will. It's going to have some of these specific sections in it. We talk about a definition and the appointment of fiduciaries. Within a will, you have to appoint a person that we call a personal representative, or a person who's going to be called a executor of your estate. That person is responsible for taking over your affairs once we pass away. Many people will advise to have like a spouse, or you may have a trusted relative or a trusted friend that can handle your affairs once you pass away. And that's a very, very important component that you have to have in every will. And you have to really think about the person who you trust will execute those duties once we pass away. So like a fiduciary, the executor is the person who can sign the accounts that used to be in your name. They'll be able to collect information. They will be responsible for dispersing your assets, whether or not in the probate process. That's a part that was explained in your will according to what you instructed this person to do. Within traditional wills, we have funeral arrangements, which you will also see in our Islamic wills. You have the debt provision. So within the will itself, the will have provisions where the payment of debt has to come first. You have specific bequests of tangible personal property, your residences and so forth, which will be in a traditional will, which is also contained in Islamic will too. The payment of taxes, the residuary estate. So one of the things that you have in your traditional will is, I have clients that will of course want to have specific explanations as to how their estate is going to be handled when it comes to your funeral arrangements, to be very specific on who will be the one that will be instructed to make those provisions. The payment of debt. Debts within a will or debts within an estate traditionally must be paid first before there's a distribution to the heirs or to any charitable distributions. Those are one of the first things. We're looking at the second component here, where we see the specific bequests, the disposition of tangible personal property and residences. Now, interesting enough, there's a comparison between the specific bequest and the portion that we have from the Islamic will standpoint, which is the portion where we can devise and give our properties to certain individuals that may not inherit traditionally through the schedule of inheritance that's provided in the Quran. And sometimes within a residuary estate, we see this portion here. This is after your payment of all your debts, after you've had the payment of taxes, after you've had any specific bequests or specific items or portions of property that are to go to specific people or charitable organizations. You have the residuary estate, and that's what's left over. That's what's left over that's going to be really separated up and disposed of according to the heirs that you've identified in the will. Within the will too, as I mentioned before, you have the provisions that are for the powers of your fiduciary. And in our any traditional will, as well as in the will that you would want to have Islamically, that it will be defined who that person is, who is your executor, who the person is that is the personal representative. That's an interchangeable term, but what those duties will be. In addition to that, those duties really are also spelled out in the law. So the law does give you the responsibilities that a person will have when it comes to disposing of the estate. And we have one of the, I'd say the most important part of your will, hopefully you can see this, is the signature and attestation clause. The signature part of a will. No will is valid unless you sign it. All right, no will is valid unless it is signed. Now, I have had experiences where people will say, well, I wrote down last night, I wrote down my will or what I wanted to do, and here it is. This is where I want my things to go, and I wrote it down, and it's not signed, and I didn't sign it. This is just what it is this valid. And I say, well, you one of the things that you did, you wrote something down. That's a start, but the signature is important, and not only is the signature important, but you have to have it signed. So if it's not signed in the presence of two witnesses, I'm going to go back to the two witnesses, it's not valid. So in any will that you would use, not only do you have to have it signed, but it has to be signed and attested in front of two adult witnesses. If it is not witnessed, it is not going to be a valid will that will be able to be admitted into probate or any courts. So we'll go back here. So signature attestation, we have to have those witnesses. Some of the components of our traditional will, this Islamic will, we have, of course, the sources of the Quran and the Sunnah that are our sources of our legislation and law that guide us on how the will, and really we were talking about the heirs and the laws of inheritance is the critical important component of this. For us living in the United States, and for us living in a country where we're not guided by the laws of Islam as far as the legal system, this is why it's very important for us to have our Islamic inheritance provisions contained in the wills that we write and the wills that will be executed and admitted to a court or probate. If you don't have a will, and if you don't have one that has been done properly, then if you die without a will, you go through what's called the intestate process. And this happens for everyone, which means it's going to go according to what the laws of the state say it should be devised. A spouse will get a portion, surviving heirs or children will get their portions, but it's not going to be in unison with what Islam requires us to do, which is the danger of not having your will together. Another part that we have within our Islamic will, of course, we see the testatorship, which is important to identify, and the declaration of faith. These are not necessary components of it. These are some of the components that I've seen and folks have seen in some of the traditional wills that have been passed on as samples through ISNA, ICNA, and other Islamic organizations. There may be also exhortations within our Islamic wills to advise our heirs and advise those around us to stay true to the deen, to be strict in their adherence to the faith. Some of their last words and advisements to those people. Within our Islamic wills, you've seen the declaration of liabilities and assets, keeping track of what you own and who you owe money to. Schedules can be composed of that. That is not necessarily required in your traditional will, and your many wills that you will see that are filed within the state don't have a listing of your assets and your liabilities contained in that. That's not going to be filed with the state. We also have the appointment of your fiduciary, your personal representative, which is important to, that has to be included in that will. And then we have the parts of the estates that are specifically bequested. And that's when I went back to in the beginning. We have the portion that is allowed to be devised to someone who does not necessarily inherit, that does not or cannot inherit from us as Muslims, according to the Sharia distribution laws and terminology. The person that cannot inherit, there is a 1/3 portion that within our wills that we use now, we can use that portion to devise and grant monies or property to those stated individuals. And I think the man can probably go over that in more detail, but there is a portion that in our Islamically compliant wills that can be used within the states where we can devise and give money to a charity. We may at some point use a portion that is going to be devised and given to someone who cannot inherit from us from the traditional inheritance laws. They cannot inherit from us if it's a non-Muslim spouse or a non-Muslim child that does not inherit traditionally, but maybe we can have them included in that portion of the 1/3 portion. Provisions that emphasize the inheritance. These are some of the ayahs that are in Surah Nisa. They give some of the inheritance explanations on how and in what manner they're going to be separated. Fortunately, we have brothers like Brother Zia and his company and others out there that help you to calculate those percentages, because it can be a little bit complex, a little bit confusing if you're trying to find out if you have one son and 2 daughters, if you have a wife or 2, or if you have you don't have any children, if you just have surviving brothers. Do your parents inherit from you? What portion goes to your parents if your parents are living? And that could be the part that can be a little bit confusing to folks if they don't have the proper guidance to get them through that. And once again, just to quickly get through this part of it, we have what's important, the signature of our 2 adult witnesses, which is important. That has to be done in any will that will be admissible in any court of law, which is the probate process. Any will that's going to be admitted, that's going to be valid, has to be signed by 2 adult witnesses signed in their presence. Now, there may be situations where someone has had their will completed, they've read it, they've approved it, they want it to be executed, but physically they cannot sign it. What do you do? Fortunately, the case law in Maryland does support someone signing the will for the person who's given it, but as long as they're directing an individual to sign it in their presence before those 2 witnesses, that can still be valid. If you have a will that is not signed before those witnesses, it is subject to be challenged, which means all of the work that you've done will go for naught because you don't have the witnesses that are necessary to back that up. And why is it necessary to have witnesses? Because the witnesses, of course, can attest to a few different things. The validity that they witness that you did, this is what you're saying that you want to get done. These are the people that you want to inherit if they've read all the contents. That you did, in fact, sign it on the date that you did sign. And additionally, too, if there's something in the future when your will goes into the probate process where there's a contesting of your capability, your capacity. So capacity challenges are one of the primary ways that wills are challenged. When someone wants to believe that, hey, no, she didn't really say this, or she really didn't believe, she didn't really say that this item was going to go to the specific charity, or any other challenges, those witnesses can be there to hopefully help attest to the competency that you had at the time that you signed, what they saw, how they observed you, whether or not there's a competency issue that could be brought up in a later court challenge. Witnesses are critically important. Quickly, the verses, how we compare the two. The secular will, of course, does the various things, identifying the testator, fiduciary appointments, funeral arrangements will have that. You have payment of debts. You have the bequests. You have the payment of taxes. You have the residual estate, which is what's left over. That's usually the portion. That is the portion that's going to be separated and devised out and given to your heirs according to how you've specifically spelled it out in the will. Of course, there's a definition of the fiduciary powers. I want to go back to a point that I did skip. Within the wills, too, it's very important to identify if you have minors, if you have kids under the age of 18. It's important to identify a guardian for your children should your other child's parent predecease you, who would have the responsibility of taking care of your children. You should have that within the will. Additionally, with that too, if you have property that you were going to give to a minor, you're going to identify not only a guardian of the person, which is to take care of the child, but also someone's going to take care of the property that they don't have the legal capacity to administer, money that you're giving them. If you're going to have within that too a section that's going to explain specifically how and when your child will receive the benefits of the estate, the monetary benefits of the estate. That's an important fiduciary to have, and it's contained in the quote unquote secular will, and it's something that also should be contained in our Islamic will. Signature and attestation clause, we see that too there. Our Islamic will, of course, we see same similar things that the wills that have to be, if you want your will to be admissible in the state where you live, it can have these components, but it must have these other necessary components that it can contain in what the quote unquote secular will. You can exhort your descendants, you have your assets and liabilities that could be contained in there. It's not necessary. It could be contained in there, and that's something, of course, the shape can explain. Potentially the appointment of fiduciaries, of course, contain bequeathals. We have the specific portions that may go to a charity or may go to a person who cannot inherit according to the Islamic inheritance provisions. Of course, the heirship is very critical here. That's because we don't live in a country where it's going to be automatically, the inheritance is going to be applied according to the inheritance laws, the Sharia inheritance laws. We have to put that in our will. You have to put it there. You have to spell it out. You have to put the categories. You got to put the chart to show what the percentages are going to be. The signature and attestation is important. And of course, the final question always is, can you accomplish, everything? Can one will accomplish both goals? And of course, the answer is yes, you can do both. You can have your secular, your will that's Islamically compliant, but also passes the muster so that it can be admissible in any court or jurisdiction where you live. And I'll just go with one quick question some people may ask is, if I have a will created and if I live in Texas and I get my will done and I move to Maryland, do I have to change and get a new will? Not necessarily, as long as that will in Texas still follows the requirements that the state where you're residing does. And namely one of the major requirements outside of any of the other laws it could violate when it comes to distribution, but is that you have the will signed in the presence of two adult witnesses. And that's what I have. I'll stop here.
All right, Jazakallah khair, brother. One other thing on one point on both witness signs. If can you tell them that if they notarize their will front of witnesses, how important is that?
Well, yeah, when we come to the notary, now a notary itself is important. A notary is a person person who is sworn by the Secretary of State of the state in which they reside to be a legal witness. A notary adds an extra layer of importance and an extra layer of validity to the will. From my last reading of the code, that a notary is not a requirement.
Yes.
It's not a requirement.
It is.
Go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, I said a notary is not a requirement, but you do have to have the two witnesses. Is that the question, Brother Zia?
No, the reason we use notary for the will to self-prove it. So in case one of those witnesses is no more, they are out of state or they are expired or passed away, then
right.
when the system goes to the court, the will process goes to the court, judge already sees it that notary already seen and witness and self-proved it.
Right,
So
exactly.
that expedite, that's a added benefit. So it's not required, but it's a little bit extra effort to have a notarized done. So it keeps much more organized and much more protection.
Yeah, exactly. And you're correct in that the notary will provide the extra level of protection should there be a contesting of the witnesses or contesting to the validity of the will and the witness is not available, you do have the extra notary. Okay.
All right, brother. MashaAllah, Jazakallah khair. Let me share my screen and
sure.
I'm gonna. All right, can you see my screen? Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wa hlul 'uqdatam min lisani yafqahu qawli. Brothers and sisters, thank you very much. Jazakallah khair for Imam and Sister Saki and Brother Abdullahi for arranging such a wonderful and very, very important topic to our community. As Imam said, he started with the hadith of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam that knowledge of inheritance will be the first one to taken away. And there's a following hadith afterward that there be two people fighting amongst each other, and there won't be a person to help them decide what to do on inheritance because of the problem and complexity of it. Brothers and sisters, as Brother Ingram says, this is very, very, very important topic to talk about. And he started in the beginning that we always shy. I even have some clients crying in front of me when we are talking about wills and death. But it is one thing that we know living thing can run away from it. And more we remember and more we prepare ourselves, it's easy it is. I will go through some of the requirements on Islamic point of view. Little bit information about myself, why I do this and why I lived through a personal incident and that made me come to this field. So on the knowledge point of view, as we said, the law of inheritance is in Sharia. These laws are stipulated by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Wealth that Allah gives us, it's not up to us to do whatever we want to do while we are living, and certainly not when we passed away. And we have to live as a Muslim in the framework of requirement, a framework of Allah dictate us in a Quran, and set down all the living while after passing away all the requirements that we have to do. One of the important thing, the reason we do, Islamic point of view, we do Salah 5 times a day. We have to do Zakah. We have to do a lot of other Islamic practice and religious practice. But in Quran, it is so highly emphasized by Allah that we do Salah 5 times a day. Allah says in a Quran multiple times that pray, but not in a Quran that you can find that when to pray, how many rakahs, how many sujood, what are the timings. But we find those information in Sunnah of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But the topic of inheritance is such an importance that Allah describes in Quran by to the fractions of each person, son, father, husband, wife, to the daughters, every single fractions, because Allah is a only the most just and most powerful. We human, we cannot be as just as Allah. Just a simple example from it. If you have a father who's 80 years old and you have a son who's 5 years old and you're trying to distribute your assets, and typically, I mean, you will think that, my father already lived his life, and my son have to spend all the life, so I'm gonna give more assets to my son. But Allah says in the Quran that you do not know who is more benefit to you. So that's why every single share is defined in the Quran in Surah Nisa. And why Surah Nisa? It's another thing that Allah knows the best. And but in our cultures, in our environments, in all the countries, we try to cheat all the females from their inheritance. They try to take their portions away. They try to seduce always in the last 1400 years they try to take away. So Allah put that dictations in Surah Nisa, name after the female. And inheritance uh, point of view, all the codings, not just regular people, your children's, your family, but the orphans, more importantly. um, After that, Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they had one of the hadith says that after the death of a human being, only three things follow him. Number one, knowledge of Islam, sadqa jariyah, and a righteous child. One of the things we can do to help all those is having a proper created will, because if you can't leave a sadqa jariyah, there's no reward afterward. In Islamic will, you can decide, for example, MCC, you can leave a sadqa jariyah for your will that can go to MCC or any other charity that you can like, and that's a blessing after you passed away. Righteous child, if you leave a problem for them, if you don't have a will, and upon death, they are scrambling for everything. They don't know where's everything, where are the documents, what we need to be done. They will create more problems for them instead of solving them. So they will have more issues with you. You don't create these wills for fun. You don't create these documents for joy and having this is just family or just to have those. But for two reasons, and mainly two reasons. Number one, Allah command us. Prophet Muhammad SAW also told us in hadith. Second, you have to love your family, you have to love your children, you have to love your um, relatives to leave a will. If you don't love them, you don't have to. They can always have. We all have seen so many issues with the community. So many. We have seen funerals that people are gathered and they have issues and they have a problems afterwards. One small thing why I've been doing this and why we been doing, and what was the reason to start Islamic state planning. I came into financial field in 2007 after death of my father in Annapolis, and he was all right. Alhamdulillah, I was 22 years old, and I started working and taking care of my family. But after 2 years, one of his friend passed away with the oldest son at the age of 14. And the devastation I have seen to that family, it forced me to come into the field that I can help more Muslims, especially. That was my niyyah in the beginning, that we need to establish, I need to learn, and I need to educate our community as much as we can. After a few years, a lot of our clients, they were asking us that we want to have Islamic state planning. We want to leave our assets according to Quran and Sunnah. So we started doing a research. We did a couple of years of research to figure out what is the best possible way to combine Islamic and American law together, and the way that it does not conflict each other. So we come up with our own concept of contributing, because in Quran, Allah says the distribution need to be certain way, but American law requires need to be written, it need to be witnessed, it need to be according to the county, state, and federal laws. So we have to combine both in certain way in case there's a issue of any Islamophobic judge or any person that they can say that, all right, this is not a Islamic country, we can't accept Sharia law, so we reject. So we came into that scenario that we have to prepare a will in a certain way that it follows and complies with both point. Okay, so legal disclaimer, unlike Brother Ingram, I'm not an attorney, I'm a financial planner. I've been doing financial planning for 2007. I have attorneys working with me in my field, in my firm. They handle everything and they take care of legal aspect. Forgotten fard, it is the forgotten obligations upon all the Muslims. Since 2007, I have seen so many incidents, so many issues that people left with without a will, and they don't have any proper estate planning or asset planning and any distributions point of view. They have so many issues afterward. Today's agenda, I'm gonna brief, instead of going through all these, we're just gonna focus on Islamic perspective of it. By the way, we can't just put a sign on halal to make it halal will. It has to follow the full guideline of everything. What is estate? Estate is all your business, your cars, your jewelry, your life insurance, checking, saving account. That is your estate. The goal of estate is to control your property while you're alive, take care of ourselves, and if we become disabled, we have to distribute properly and utilize properly. Give what we want to give and whom we want to give whenever we want, and save every tax dollar properly, professionally, and legally possible. Instead of letting your, just for example, Brother Ingram was saying, having the will, and one of the thing is executor. If we don't choose our executor, court appoints an executor. And his job is to come evaluate and distribute the assets, and they can charge up to 5 to 10% of your total assets fees. So it is very important to plan properly. What makes Islamic? In Surah Baqarah, Allah says, it is ordered for you when death approaches any of you for leaving wealth to make it a fair testament in the favor of his parents and nearest relatives upon a duty of who have taqwa. Then Surah Nisa, there are shares for a man, shares for a woman, and when he left by the parents and those nearest relative, whether a property be small or large. So in Quran, Allah saying that it doesn't matter that if you have $100 or if you have 100,000 or 100 million, you have to have a proper planning done. You have to execute it properly, and you have to leave a proper guideline for the family afterward. In a hadith narrated by Abdullah bin Umar, Allah's Messenger, peace be upon him, said, it is not permissible for any Muslims who have something to will to stay for 2 nights without having a last will and testament written and kept ready with him. Very, very important. And also the next one is also very important. Allah's Messenger, peace be upon him, said, a man may do a good deed for 70 years, but if he act unjustly when he leaves his last testament, the wickedness of his deed will be sealed upon him, and he will enter into the fire. If other hand, a man act wickedly for 70 years, but he is just in his last will and testament, the goodness of his deed will seal upon him, and he will enter into the garden. Very, very, very important hadith, because when we think about it, a lot of, I have seen the stories of my so-and-so son or daughter, they don't obey me, or they don't listen to me, and I will never give them a portion in my wealth, or I will take them out of my inheritance. And very important, and according to this hadith, if they do that, they're literally taking them out from heaven as well. Islamic law of inheritance. before goes everything, number one thing to pay off after the death is funeral and burial expenses. Then second thing is the debt, whatever debt is owned. Wasiya, everything. We think that wasiya is a whole wasiyat, whole will, but wasiya is only discretionary shares of 1/3. That's the only shares we have that we can utilize or we can give it to anybody who want. More than that, we cannot distribute. Everything else is property and property of hires. In Surah Nisa, we focus on this. Our calculation method is from Surah Nisa, Ayah 11 and 12. Ayah 11 start with that, Yusikumullah fi auladukum. Allah instructs you concerning your children, and goes through every single share. And same as Ayah 12, every single share is described afterward. But in Quran, right after the 12, Ayah 13, it is a warning for all the Muslims. And it says, Tilka hadudullahi min yatiyullah wa rasulah yudhil jannatin tajri min tahtiha al-anharu halidina fiha wa zalika fawzul al-azim. These are limits set by Allah, and whoever obey Allah and His Messenger will be admitted by Him in garden in paradise, under which rivers flow, abiding eternally therein, and that is the great attainment. Just look at this point and just remember that we all pray, but when we go to pray, do we have a hushu? Is our prayers accepted? Nobody knows. We give a charity, but we always, by the time we are giving charity, we have 10 different pictures going on Facebook and everywhere. Are they accepted? But this one thing, Allah is giving a promise that if you do as Allah told you to do, Allah is granting you the Jannah. 14 is also warning, and whoever disobey Allah and His Messenger and transgress His limits, He will put into the fire to abide eternally therein, and He will have a humiliating punishment. And that's a warning afterward in Quran. And in Sunan Ibn Majah, there's a hadith, whoever tries to avoid giving the inheritance to his hire, Allah will deprive him from the inheritance in the paradise on the day of resurrection. All right. So what are the components? I will take briefly and then we will open it up to the questions. What are the components? Brother was saying lost will and testament. One of the things I try to do, keep lost will and living will separate. Living will is advanced medical directive, and when it goes to, it dictates about your burial, your medical condition, your all the scenarios in medical point of view, and death, and where you need to be buried and all those. The reason for that, last will have all of your personal information, your inheritance, and your children's and all their information. And advanced medical goes to your medical database, so you do not want to have both together at one place. That is our analogy, but everybody have a different. Then we have a power of attorney, living trust in most cases. As brother already says, that person must be 18, capacity tester, sound mind, free will and understanding must be in written to be valid. And holographic will is the one you write it with the hand. Some state recognize it, some don't. Opening statement should say last will and testament, revocations of previous will, at least one beneficiary. One of the most important thing a will does is having a guardianship for minor children. To me, that's my most important assets that we have as a Muslim and as a parents. And upon anything happen to me and my wife, we need to have a Muslim guardian for our children who can take care of them and raise them as a Muslim instead of putting them into the state foster system. Executor, scepter, probate assets. Will does not avoid probate, it goes through probate system. Some conflicts with the state law that if you don't have a will, Islamic point of view, wife from non-Muslim wife does not inherit, non-Muslim children does not inherit, Muslim, non-Muslim parents, they don't inherit, adopted children, in-laws, step relations, children born out of wedlock, and convicted murder of tester. But 1/3 scenario that you have, you can issue any of those from those shares. Debt is very, very important to take care of it. Prophet Muhammad would not offer a funeral prayer for a person who have a debt. And debt is not just regular debt. We also have some debt that we pledge in a masjid that we don't honor or we forgot afterward. We have to take care of those debt as well. Donation amounts, pledge, loans, bank, borrow, taxes, and everything. Life insurance is very complicated issues, and every person have a different scenarios, but life insurance basically comes after the death. So your will dictates whatever at the time of a death. And life insurance comes evaluate, and the process start after the death, and then the benefit comes afterward the death. Last will, again, all those documents with information. Probate, what is a probate? Probate in legal term is a legal process of validating the will and determine the ownership of property. It allows a transfer of wealth when the tester dies. So in a simple word, when somebody passed away, the process of transferring of wealth from dead to alive is called probate. Document of living trust, we revocable living trust, last will and testament, living will of each, power of attorney, and funding document like warranty deed and stuff. Trust does save a lot of fees on probate, bypass the probate process, and it is literally can live through, and it is a little bit better protection than a will. These are just basic scenario. I'm gonna. This is one statement we found long time ago when we was looking at it. The people who can read Urdu, they will understand, but I will translate. He says, इंसान एक ऐसा गाफिल मंसूबा साज है कि वो अपनी सारी प्लानिंग में कभी मौत को शामिल नहीं करता. So Brother Ingram, it says that the humans are such a bad planners that they never plan to die. They never planning death in their financial planning for life. So I think this is my contact information, and brothers, I think we should open it up for the questions. I try to be as fast as possible. If anybody have questions, I think Brother Aziz have a mic, and he can open it up for questions for both of us, brother.
Yep. Jazakumullah khair, Brother Damani and Brother Yasir, for those amazing presentations. And we have a number of questions to get through, so I will go ahead and jump right into it. I see people have already begun raising their hands. So just again, if you joined, if you want to activate your mic and ask your question verbally, just use the raise hand function by clicking on the participants tab, and it will go ahead and line it up for me so I can go ahead and call on you. But I will begin with the questions that we got in the chat. A couple of them, so I'm going to begin with the ones that came in during Brother Damani's portion. And some of them are a bit similar, so we might begin with like I guess a rapid fire sorts of session. And so the first one, there was a couple about are notary required, and so and then there's also one after it's notarized, does it have to be registered with the court? There was one, can a witness be an inheritor, and must there be two witnesses in addition to a notary? If you wanted to touch on that, Brother Damani or Brother Yasir.
Oh, okay, I'll quickly. as Brother Yasir had mentioned before, the notary is not required for a will, but a notary does add an extra level of protection should one of the two witnesses not be available, if something happens to the witness, and it really becomes that part of the issue if there's a challenge to the validity of the will in probate. So notary is not required, but a notary is an extra level of protection. But if you have two adult witnesses that sign in the presence of the testator, the will is valid.
Okay, awesome. And then there's one that comes through and says, is fiduciary interchangeable with executor? Does the witness, sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go ahead. Finish the question, bro.
And the second part of that question was, does the witness need to be living at the time of the will, at the time the will is executed?
Well, absolutely. I mean, to sign the will as a witness, you have to be alive. So it's not a witness just as name. It is someone that's witnessing the signature. They're witnessing the will being executed. The question about fiduciary interchange, fiduciary is just a term that describes people that have responsibilities within, in this case, within the probate process. So a fiduciary, for our purposes, would be the executor or the personal representative. And one of the important things is that this person has control of the estate when we pass away. They don't have any rights. They don't have any authority to do anything on your behalf before you pass away. So a fiduciary is the term that describes a person with a designated responsibility. An executor, in the case of a will, is the fiduciary who is responsible for administering your estate. And if you have a will, they're responsible for administering your estate in accordance to what you put in your will.
Okay. And then there's also a question regarding two witnesses, but I think this is more so coming from the Islamic aspect, but it reads, regarding two witnesses required, a male witness or a mix of male and female. So I'm assuming they're asking, is there a requirement in terms of whether it's the witnesses must be male or female?
Well, I think I'm gonna leave that to Brother Zia, Brother the Imam, on the two witness requirement for females and so forth. Go ahead.
Imam, you want to take the question or you want me to answer that? I think Imam is muted. I can answer it. In Islamic point of view, usually it's a decision that they should have a two male, or for one male can execute as a one witness, or for each male there should be two female to act as a witness. So if there's no male, either two male or four female need to be witness it. Islamic point of view, but American point of view, as a legal law, you can have a male or female witness.
From Islamic perspective also, it's not necessarily to be a male, because witnesses, it's not even important it's good to do it, but from the Islamic perspective, I can write my will and sign it without any witnesses, and if I die, then the court of law, they will follow my will, what I wrote on my hand, and I sign it. So that's enough. Even without witness, the judge, a Muslim judge, can follow that will.
Yes.
And also, and the dalil of that, we know that when one of the Sahaba, actually the hadith that the scholars, they base on that I can give 1/3 of my wealth for as a sadaqah after my death, is the hadith of Sa'd, when Sa'd bin Abi Waqqas. He was sick, and the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam was visiting him, and he said, "Ya Rasulullah, I'm a wealthy man and I have only one daughter, and can I give 2/3 of my wealth away for sadaqah?" And the Messenger say no, and he say, "Can I give half of my wealth?" And he say no, and he say, "Can I give 1/3?" And he say, "Yes, but it's a lot. To leave your children with wealthy, it's better than to leave them poor, asking help. So because of that hadith, the scholars, they said there was no witness or anything, and the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam made very clear. However, it's, of course, nowadays we are in an era that everything should be written, everything should be witnesses. So to follow that, even the scholars, they can say, they may be able to say any will should have witnesses. If they say that, there's nothing wrong with that even.
Yes.
I saw the one question about the witnesses. As Imam has said, that from the Islamic point of view, that there doesn't have to be the witness to the will, signing for the Islamic will, and that. But in the States here, we have to have the witnesses. So
Yes,
that is the challenge that you will have. That it does have the witnesses available. And I was a follow-up to one of the questions about if having a witness that has to be alive. So they was laughing. Of course, you need to be alive when you witness. But when they pass away, we can't really control who's alive at the time.
yeah,
After you executed your will. Hopefully, when you have the two, at least one person will be able to validate the execution at the time, and so that is why one of the reasons you have two, unless one is not available, you can't attest to the competency.
and I want to go back also about the witnesses, because in the Sharia law, there is a different type of scenarios. Like, for example, Brother Zia, he mentioned about two sisters and one brother. That is the dain. The longest verse in the Quran is, we call ayat al-dain in Surah Al-Baqarah, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say, if there is no two mans, one man and two women will be sufficient. But at the same time, there is a certain area that only women can witness, and man, they cannot be a witness. So will, it's not part of that. There's some other type of witnesses in the Islamic law that in a certain area only women can be a witness, certain area they will be equal, and another area it will be, man and two women. So there is a different, area that need to.
Absolutely. One other thing on the Brother Ingram, the question on the witnesses upon death. I think they say that I was reading, when you notarize the witnesses, the person who notarized while they are executing the will, and if the witness passed away, judge still have to consider it, because a notary is also acting as a state authority.
Exactly.
So once a notary witnesses and notarize it, then that will has to be accepted regardless if the witness is alive or dead. So that's why I actually I'm a notary for Maryland and Virginia, so I self-prove, it called process of self-proving the will. So I notarize every single will that we issue. So in case that scenario happens with somebody, the witness move or they are no longer, they don't have any problem at that point.
Okay, Jazakumullah khair. So another question that came up earlier on in the chat is, what happens if the family situation changes, either birth, death, divorce, etc., or incur additional debt between when you wrote the will and when the death occurs? Can the will be drafted flexibly to address these changes, or will the will need to be redrafted? And I think this comes from maybe a more legal perspective.
Okay, so if well, there's certain events in your life that would require making a change to your will. One, of course, new marriage or divorce, the addition of children or death of children, and of course, the death of a spouse. When it comes to your adding of assets and so forth from a will perspective, I mean, technically from the will perspective, it doesn't require a change if you add on more assets, because your will, your traditional will through the state, is not going to have all your assets listed there. Maybe Brother Yasir, when it comes to a living trust, if you're adding more properties and so forth, then within a living trust, you would continue to fund the trust with those assets that are acquired. So that would be something that would be done in addition to, but changing the document itself, not necessarily. The things that you are concerned about when you want to make the change is if you, of course, marriage or divorce, death of a spouse or death of a child, and then also potentially too, when you have others that may of any kind of death that may take place. So if it's a parent, you may, at one point when you had your will from the Islamic perspective, your parents that are Muslim, that are alive at the point, they have their shares that are delineated in the Sharia at that point within Islamic inheritance. And if they pass away, then that may be some chance, that's a time to make a change, to change how the shares are going to be divided.
Jazakallah khair. So I'm going to shift over to Brother Javon, who has his hands up. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Imam.
I just want to add this, we have to understand that in Islam, from the Islamic perspective, you can apply.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Thank you, brothers, for hosting this wonderful presentation. My question is for Brother Damani Ingram. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, brother. You mentioned two terms at the beginning that I'm not very familiar with, and I can't speak for everybody else, but I don't know the meaning of these words. I'm not a lawyer, so could you please define the term probate, and the other term you used was, I think, attest. Can you define those terms so we can know what those mean, please? Thank you.
Yeah. So really, I think Brother Yasir mentioned it in part of his slides, but probate, just to be in layman's terms, is basically it's the legal administration of your estate. Okay, so probate happens when we pass away. Our estate is being administered by the court, or the local court in which our will is going to be probated. So it's filed with the Register of Wills or the Orphans Court, depends upon what the name is, and that's the process of how the court will administer and oversee the distribution of your assets according to the will. Or in the cases, if you don't have a will, if you died intestate, it's going to go through the intestate process, and that is probate. Okay. The other one you said, attestation. Really, that's the part of your will where you are explaining that it's basically when you're signing the attestation, your signature clause. It's a statement of you executing this will, and that you're signing the will, and then of course you have the witnesses are going to sign as witnesses. So what we're talking about, a will that's going to be admissible in any state where you live, should have the witnesses, and it has to have that signature. Hopefully that answers your question, brother.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much.
All right, alhamdulillah.
So basically, in terms of the Islamic will, we can apply to what we call in the Arabic language, at-ta'awur al-khams, the 5 area that it can be wajib, it can be must to make a will. It could be forbidden. It could be dislike. It could be liked. So, for example, if somebody entrusts you wealthy, and you are in a state of, dying, or even if you are okay, you must write a will describing how much money you've been entrusted and how much money you owe for others. And also some scholars, they add, if you were able to go to Hajj and you did not go to Hajj, you should add to your will that in a state of my death, somebody should do before my Hajj and fasting and other items. So that's wajib. Also, I want to make very clear, when you are writing will, you cannot write more than 1/3 of your wealth. You only allowed to write 1/3 of your wealth that you can give either the Islamic centers or Islamic schools, or you can give some individuals, some relatives that who is not in your heirs. You cannot write will for your heirs, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made their shares very clear. In the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam himself, he said, "Inna Allah a'da kulla dhi haqqin haqqahu ala la wasiyata liwarith." Allah give each person his share. Those who inherit you, Allah give them their shares, whether they are spouses, whether they are children, whether they are parents, whether they are brothers and sisters. And of course, sometimes one person can block another person from the will. Also, I want to add that you have a right to revoke your will. If you write a will, for example, and you want to change your will anytime, you can change it at any time under any circumstances, any reasons. So that's also, but the sunnah is, as the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ said, to have our will all the time.
And I just want to add to what Imam said too, is that as he was talking about the 1/3 portion, which is the portion that you can have some say-so over, that just to emphasize again what the Imam said is that you can't add to a share that an heir is already going to get according to the Sharia. You can't just add to it. So if you say, I don't like the way that the fact that my daughters may get less than my sons, so I'm going to add to it in the 1/3 portion, as the Imam saying, that's not something that is to be done.
Jazakallah khair. Oh, sorry, were you going to add something, Brother Yasir?
Yeah, brother, a lot of questions are going, I was just reading through, a lot of questions are asking that registration of will with a court, state of Maryland. State of Maryland does not require will to be registered with any court. You can register. There's certain, like I live in Annapolis and Arundel County, county clerk's office. They charge $5 fees for your life, and they give a number to you, your beneficiary and your executor and guardians. They have access to it, but you are not required to register in case you have to do any changing on further updations of will.
Awesome, Jazakallah khair. So we and Jazakallah khair, Imam and Brother Damani, for touching on the Islamic stipulations, particularly when it comes to like the 1/3. We have a number of questions in that category, so I'm going to shift focus there. But right before that, I have one quick question that came in the chat a couple of times: is when should people start thinking about a will? Someone mentioned that they have an 18-year-old child. Should they start thinking about the wills then? Newlywed couples, when should they start thinking about it? How often should they start updating it?
Brother, you want to take it?
Oh, me to take that question?
Yeah,
Or
you want to take that, or you want me to?
SubhanAllah. I mean, it's really as soon as, I guess, if you're going to follow the hadith about when you have something to give away, you need to have it written down in a will. And I think one of the things that people get shy about is that when, as Brother Yasir talks about in an estate plan, we think, well, I need to have, a certain amount of money that needs to go, and then it's at that point that I should have. Well, I tell folks that when you have something to devise, to give away, you need to start having it, whether how small or large it is, it doesn't matter. It's time once you get to that age of decision to work to have it. And the reason that you want to think about it too, especially for folks who are in families where they may be the only Muslim, okay, where they may not have Muslim family members or heirs, and they have children, okay, you need to have that set in your will so that you can designate who's going to take care of your child or your children. Your minor children. So those are very important things to have. And I don't have like a certain age to say this is the time to do it, but I always advise when you have something to give away, and especially you have someone you're responsible for, you need to have your will together, at least.
There is one thing I want to remind everybody. It's not something related with the will. Actually, it's related because in Surah An-Nisa, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talk about how to distribute the wealth when the person die, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala frame from the beginning and the end in 2 ayah. It's so amazing how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala framed this. So before the ayah of will start, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, وَلْيَخْشَى الَّذِينَ لَوْ تَرَكُوا مِنْ خَلْفِهِمْ ذُرِّيَّةً ضِعَافًا خَافُوا عَلَيْهِمْ فَلْيَتَّقُوا اللَّهَ وَلْيَقُولُوا قَوْلًا سَدِيدًا. It is an emotional state when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, let those, if they left behind young children who cannot support themselves, if they leave behind young babies who cannot support themselves, have fear and worry about the state of their children, let them be fair and take care of the orphans and fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and say something good. So and then immediately Quran shift to the wasiyah, yusikumullahu fi awladikum, and Allah talk about how much each person will get, whether they are children, spouse, parent. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala conclude after that, the ayah Brother Zia mentioned, tilka hududullah. This is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's boundaries and its laws. After Allah made very clear, say those are Allah's boundaries and His laws. وَمَنْ يُطِعِ اللَّهَ وَرَسُولَهُ يُدْخِلْهُ جَنَّاتٍ تَجْرِي مِنْ تَحْتِهَا الْأَنْهَارُ خَالِدِينَ فِيهَا ذَلِكَ هُوَ الْفَوْزُ الْعَظِيمُ. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, whoever obey Allah and His messenger and respect those borders and duly do the way Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants us to do, Allah promised for those they will enter the Jannah and live therein forever. And Allah said that is the great success. I know when nowadays some our brothers and sisters, they have a secular mind. So in the ayah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say, for example, a male has 2 shares of female, right? So someone may say, you know what, we are in era right now, my girls and my daughters and my son is both educated and both this and that, and I want to just make half and half. That's not right. You cannot even have a doubt even. You know, somebody may have a doubt and say, you know what, this is not fair. If you have that doubt and it's not fair, what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said is fair, that's very dangerous for our faith. So we should always go back to the Quran and always read and try our best, you know, to understand what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying in the Quran.
Okay. Brother, I'm going to add one small thing on this. I get this question very often that, you know, my sister, my daughters, my mother, they're going to inherit this much. The inheritance of female, it's mother, daughter, wife, whoever. A male son, husband, or whoever, when, for example, a father dies and the distribution is distributed to the daughter and son gets the two shares, daughter gets one. Son does not have any rights on daughter's assets, but daughter is the full responsibility of son to take care of. So it's they are getting less shares, but that shares is there to keep. They cannot give back to the son, or they cannot give it back. But the son or brother, they have to take care of their sister or their mother regardless. So that's one thing to be clear on it. Brother Aziz, any more questions? Or I've been reading few more questions here. You want me to just jump on it or just wait for you?
Sure, go ahead, jump right into it. I think we just, in that last segment, we touched upon many different questions that related to the Islamic aspect of the 1/3. So go right into it, Brother Yasir.
Okay, one of the brother asked about trust. That are we going to talk about trust? Brother, we can talk about it, but you have a contact number for both of us. You can give us a call and we can give you explanations of trust. The reason we keep our presentation short, that we can have more questions and more, you know, dialogue process. Trust is a process that is a living entity. You can transfer your assets into it, and then that trust avoids probate. It can be easily transferred. It's a new form of waqf. In old days, the Islamic trust was called waqf, that you are putting something into a waqf that's distributing your asset to it. So that's on that. Again, a lot of questions about notary and registration. One of the brothers say that once you register, that becomes official. Your will becomes official the time you sign, and both witness signs. It doesn't have to be registered to become official. It's immediately upon your signatures and your witness signs, it is official. And if you notarize it, then it's already proven, self-proved it. Brother Damani, any questions you want to take over?
Let's see. Just to kind of add to what you said about the registration of the will.
Yeah.
And the one of the things that I'll tell clients why it's good to send it to your local county register of wills or orphans court is that it's there for safekeeping. So you know where it is. It's safe. No one can go and inspect it unless it is you typically that's the one that can go inspect it.
Yes.
And there's no question that's trying to find it. Sometimes people you have a will and you hide, you save it somewhere, but no one else knows where it is, the original will.
Yes.
Or you put it into a safe deposit box or someplace that requires you to be present to retrieve it. And you pass away, of course, you can't be the one to retrieve it. So, having it at a register of wills just adds a better level of protection and
Yes.
sense of security for yourself to know that it's somewhere and it's done, and your heir or your personal representative knows where to go to get it when you pass.
Okay, one important questions I read over here that somebody have a child with a disability, and they, yeah, how, how will a child with a disability should be handled? So there's a special need trust for the children's, and we have done those with the disability children, that you appoint somebody to take care of them, you pay them a certain fees or dues, or they can pay them after you, so they can take care of. So there's a special needs trust that can be created for the people, children with a disability.
One thing I think we need to make very clear: you cannot write will for your children.
Yes.
Period.
Yes.
Because that's what the hadith said. In Allah a'da kulla dhi haqqin haqq. Allah give each one who will inherit you his rights. So you cannot write will. Will is outside of those who inherit you. We have to understand that. Number one. Number two, if suppose someone say they have 3 children, and one maybe they have less money and they want to give something, for sympathy, they cannot do that. But if they do it, and the person die, is dependent on the other 2. If that other 2 approve it and they say it is okay, we want to accept what our father said, it will be okay.
Okay, I think we got a question from Brother Joffrey that certain assets, house, retirement accounts, and all those are not part of the estate. Brother, all your assets contains, from your life insurance to your house to from a Western point of view, as well as your Islamic law, they are part of your state, regardless if it's your life insurance, your retirement money, your 401k, or any savings, or your house, your business, your bank accounts. Even you have few $100s in there, they are part of your state.
So I'm gonna, sorry, go ahead, Brother Damani.
Yeah, Brother Yasir, could you explain to him, I think one of the things is when you have like a house, well, for a house, an example, with a husband and wife, many times
joint tenancy, yeah,
exactly, joint tenancy, where we have tenancies by the entirety, which already the contract has been established how it's to be shared.
You want to take over that, or you want me to?
Well, I would say I could say this, that with the home, there's certain assets that you have prior to them being put into the will. They've already determined their ownership of those assets. They've already been shared. So, for example, a house has a joint tenancy with the right of, it's a tenancy by the entirety, which means when one spouse passes away, the house goes to the surviving spouse. And I think that would not be covered within the Islamic law, because it's already a contractual agreement that's done prior that shows where that asset is to go. And then you can't do anything with it anyway, because it's going to stay.
Yes.
It's already passing to that surviving spouse. The other part I just wanted to add to, as Imam had mentioned about doing a will for a child. One question that sometimes comes up is that, can I just have one will for me and my wife?
Yeah.
Or me and my husband. My husband is like, no, each person has to have their own set of estate planning documents. You don't share it. You don't just have one. And just to make that clear.
Brother, we had, I'm a part of funeral committee in our local masjid, and we went to one of our brother. He says, I told my wife that I bought a grave with a window to your grave inside. We're going to have joint graves. So they are connected inside. And she says that, after death, I don't need you. I don't want to see you. So, I got that question. Matter of fact, I got asked yesterday, can I have a joint will with the husband and wife? So every person dies individually, and it's their inheritance. One thing on the house, and also 401ks and retirement, your beneficiary designation takes over your, basically your will. So if your 401k have that your wife will get so-and-so shares and unless you set it up a trust. If you set it up a trust, then you transfer your assets to the trust and the trust owns the assets. Then you transfer your rights to the trust. You are a manager instead of an owner. So then it's a different point of view, but your designation, beneficiary designations always supersede your wills too.
And
We're gonna
one
go
thing
ahead. Sorry.
one thing that the Quran made very clear, the wealth will be distributed after all the funeral expenses being paid, after the wasiya, whatever the person, his will, which is 1/30 being paid, and also if he owe money to anybody, that also been taken care of it. Whatever left after that, that's what will be the wealth that will be distributed.
And interesting enough, also with that too, Imam, is that is also how most of the state laws go too. That you, even within it, you have within the other types of wills, you have your debts that are paid first. Then you may have the wasi. What they have a specific request, but for us, it's really it's the wasiya portion, the 1/3 portion that you're going to devise and distribute, and then the rest of the residual, which goes through the inheritance. So it's interesting that those things are similar in their application.
Okay, Brother Aziz, I think you are promising some brothers to.
Yeah, so I'm gonna pass over the mic to Sister Shani, who's been waiting patiently, mashallah, for a while to get her question in. So, Sister Shani, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Assalamu alaikum, everybody. So I have a question that's like multi-pronged, actually. Number one, so in the case, let's say that there's a family that consists of only daughters, and one daughter specifically lives with the parents and takes care of the parents only. One part of the question is your real estate, like the house and I guess where you live, is that considered 1/3 of the wealth?
You want to finish all your questions, or you want to?
Okay. Yes, I could do that. So I want to know if the real estate is considered a part of the wealth, and especially if one child is solely living with the parents and the other kids just don't live at home and don't take care of the parents. And number two, I wanted to know if what if one child works, like if the parents have their own business and one child works for that business. Now, I understand that the wealth would be equally divided amongst the daughters, but in the case that one daughter works and technically generates a portion of that wealth, would that be distributed in a specific way? And then number three was in regards to setting up a trust or estate. Now, from a tax perspective, I know that this a trust or an estate is created with post-tax dollars. Now, if it's created with post-tax dollars, I want to know if the recipient, now if you don't put that money into a trust and you just create a regular will and you just outline who receives what, then the recipient of whatever the wealth is, are they going to be taxed on whatever they receive? And I think I'm just trying to outline this because I saw a few questions on the chat as well. Is there a tax advantage of putting it into a trust or an estate? And I think that is all of my questions.
Imam, I think you should answer that the first portion, that if the daughter is living home and other doctors are now taking care of it. I did give it hadith about it and also in Quran, but I think Imam can answer the first section of the much better.
So basically, supposed to a family, they have two daughters and one living with them and taking care of the parent, and the other one is somewhere else.
Yes, and not taking care of it and not
taking care of the family. Yeah. That will not diminish the right of the one who's not living with. The two daughters, they have equal right when is to come the inheritance. So that's something that Islam made very clear. However, you can give something, even though the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he denounced and he refused to be a witness when a man came to him and he said, I give one of my children something and I want you to be witness. And the messenger asked him, do you give all your children? And he said, no. And he said, then I will not be a witness. But if one taking care of the parent, if they want to give some gifts and stuff like that in their lifetime, it is fine, even though it should always good to be fair and treat your children equally. But after, if you want to write a will for the one who is living with you, no. We say that clearly, you cannot write will for your children, your inheritance, heirs. And in terms of the house you live, and whatever money wealth you have, it's your wealthy. Everything will be count, and 1/3 of all your wealth you can give as a charity in your will. Whether you write for the poor people, for the masjid, for anyone you like to.
Except your inheritance, who are already inheriting your assets, right?
You cannot write will for them.
Yes, but a sister, on that point of view, there's two other things. Islamic point of view is this. Non-Islamic point of view, as a state planning perspective, you just make your assets larger. In non-Islamic point of view, what does that mean? That, for example, your house is $500,000, and that's going to the daughter, and in order to have an equal, you buy a life insurance for $500,000 and make the other daughter as a beneficiary of it, which is the cost effective.
So would it be wrong? Okay, so I guess the problem is this, that if that one daughter is technically generating some of that income, is where the confusion kind of comes in. Because if there's 5 daughters, for example, and 4 daughters are doing their own career, and then there's one daughter that's committed to working with the family and the parents specifically, and she is generating that income, is it, I guess like it's the duty of everybody to kind of divide who owns what during their point of living in order to equally distribute it according to the will?
Well, I have an answer to that just quickly, is that there should be a contract drafted amongst the daughter and the parents while they're living, as far as how the business assets are being shared, the income. I mean, if she's running the business or she's doing things with the business, then she needs to get a pay, or maybe her share of the business needs to be increased, or she needs to be added to the business asset, or whatever the asset is, or some kind of creative way to ensure that she's being compensated for what she's doing while the parents are living. And then maybe if that's a business where she can share in the profits, then that's something that is done while she's living while the parents are living too. So that's really what I see and that's
yeah.
I just want to add that it's if one of the daughters or 2 or 3 whatever working, the money they earn is their money.
Yes.
It's not that's not something included the
okay.
the wealth of the parent. That their money. So it should be very clear when they are working, the money they earn, whether they earn from their parents' company or whether that's their money, has nothing to do with the will of the parent. It has nothing to do with the wealth of the parent. As long as they are adult and working, that money, it's belonging to them. It's not something.
So would it be wrong if during the living life of the parents, if the parents had decided to put, for example, that one daughter on the documents of owning the house, for example. Now, let's say that the parents pass away, and now the daughter is one of the 3 people who technically own the house.
No, the answer is no, sister. They cannot do that. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. And sister,
you have Islamic perspective. From legal perspective, they can do that. We know that. But from Islamic perspective, they cannot do that.
Yeah.
Okay.
And sister, your last portion of the question one more time.
So setting up a trust.
Okay.
I wanted to discuss the tax advantages of doing that versus leaving just a will, like a will for everybody.
Okay. Brother Damani, you want to answer her? You want me to answer?
Well, from the tax perspective, why don't you, from the financial planners perspective,
Okay.
why don't you answer that tax question?
Okay, sister, there's a different kind of trust. There's a and B trust. There's a special, point of view. We don't know your personal situation. You can give me a call and then we can discuss privately that what is your scenario. Then I can give you proper answer. But trust does avoid some taxations. You don't need tax ID for living revocable trust. You can set it up. You can use for your social security, but it does not avoid all taxes. Depending on inheritance or whatever the scenario that could be, it has to have some implications of taxations comes in. Trust is really good vehicle to protect your assets, hide it from a plain sight, protect from the creditors, and if there's any lawsuit and stuff, that's harder to get into it compared to your personal, and also avoid probates. But it does have some tax liabilities that depending on how much the distribution is, if it's beyond the state and federal limits of inheritance, which is at this time almost 11 million.
11.7 million.
Yeah, 11.7 million for the federal, and state of Maryland about 5 million. But as Biden say, it might reduce. This bill is until 2025. So if they reduce after that, that's a different scenario. But depending on that point of view, you can we can discuss more personally, and I can give you a much better idea.
Perfect.
On that.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for your help
You're
and
welcome.
answers.
You're welcome. Wonderful.
Brother Aziz, who's next?
Yep. So we have Sister Hidayah up, and then we'll go to Sister Nazish.
Assalamualaikum.
Wa alaikum salam, sister.
Walaikum salam.
Okay, I have a quick question. It's regarding the life insurance.
Yes.
I know I used to have it before, and I realized maybe I had issues. They said it could be halal, it is haram. Then I had to drop it, and I had paid a lot of money on it. However, I also have a big debt of a student loan that worries me every day that I wouldn't have into otherwise because I already had that education, but restart it, then end up in this big, massive student loan, and there's no employment that I can get to help me pay for it. Now, I was wondering if I could get life insurance, basically to help me clear that date if Allah took me away anytime. How is Islam, Sharia, as far as life insurance is concerned? And how do I deal with student loans that we really otherwise were put into unknowingly?
Okay. Imam, you want me to take over that?
Sure.
Okay. Sister, this is a
I
book.
have no answer for it. So
Okay. I'm sorry? Sorry, brother, what did you say?
I have no answer for it. So you take
Okay. Sister, this is a book called A Muslim Guide to Investing and Personal Finance. Life insurance, I've been selling it since 2007 after my father passed away. Halal and haram, there's both, detailed debates on both sides. It's halal, it's haram, it's this and that. I will tell you one thing, as you say, your loan. Life insurance in the United States is the only instrument that can wipe out all your debt upon your death.
Well, actually, yes, that's what I thought.
So that's, and depending on scenario, there's some companies, there's a mutual company, there's a stock-based company. I've been working with a mutual company. Mutual company is the company that when you invest into it, you get, if they make profit, they share a profit with you. If they loss, they share a loss with you. There's some, policies they are guaranteed, and some are the stock-based insurance companies. But unfortunately, there's more than almost 14 million Muslims in US. But this topic we haven't brought up. We should have our own Islamic insurance that, take care of people. Insurance point of view, insurance started in the time of Hazrat Umar Raziyallahu Ta'ala anhu, when the merchant used to go and they used to lose their ships in a storm. So they came to collect, they start collecting of funds. So whoever have a loss, they will give them to bring them back to the businesses. So according to this book, Muslim Guide to Investment, mutual company is closest contract to the Islamic law, because if they get profit, they share the profit. If they lose, then they don't share it. Then you lose, and those are mutual contracts. Stock-based company are further away from it, so there's no, unless ICNA or ISNA or the new they have a fix. All the imams and all the scholars, they come up with a ruling that we should do it or shouldn't do it. But right now, it is the only financial instrument that wipes your debt upon your death.
However, I see as though it will be riba after riba. The student loan already, personally, I got into it without even knowing about what riba was.
Yes.
As I said in the first place, I've been praying to Allah, like in case my life goes away any minute. I didn't get into that willingly because I already had education, and that education is discarded. Now you get the right education and you cannot get the job. The jobs are there, but I don't have the opportunity to get into them. However, that makes me be into riba. Indirectly, I was put into it. So I feel trapped. But life insurance, just admit it, it's like a riba as well. Like if I open it up today and I've been making less than $100 each month, if I opened up $100,000 life insurance, they give me all that money which I haven't really made. Isn't that riba cleaning up riba?
It's sister, there's two things on that. Number one, your student loan, when you read the contract, some student loan says that upon your death, the contract is wiped. Your loan is wiped out. It does not transfer to anybody. Number two, your life insurance point of view, when you, it's a pool of money collected by different people. So if one dies, the money goes to them, right? Obviously you pay less, but upon reading the hadith and upon reading all the other debt that we have, for example, every single person, even you sign a contract with a guidance or any of the mortgage company, which they do Islamic law, loan, that is a loan that you're taking and you are making a promise that you're going to pay before you die, regardless if it is Islamic or non-Islamic. And then that point of view, this is the only way. If you have a $500,000 or $1 million house, how are you going to pay that off? Either you sell it, or you have your family displaced, or you have another option to pay those out. As I say that I wish that our Muslim leaders and everybody get together, and there's something called collective insurance, that they come up with a halal insurance in United States, which is very urgently needed.
Yes.
But until that, these are the only options we have to take care of it. Either we don't get into debt, we don't take anything and don't need insurance, or we have a riba that you already paying for it, or you already have a loan for car, house, or credit card, or anything, or personal loan, and then you have another options to pay that off. I'm not saying that it's halal or haram or anything, but I'm saying as a financial instrument to wipe out your debt.
Absolutely. I see. Well, the best I have done, I cannot ever buy a home because I don't want to add loans on the riba on top of ribas. Yes. So, but Imam, please say something about this. Is it better to get, I can reopen that life insurance. Definitely it can help cover the burial expenses. The masjid doesn't have to deal with me and my little child. They cannot survive.
It's a very complicated, situation, as Brother Zia said. So let's move on to other, maybe brothers and sisters.
Really? Okay.
Sister, you can, you have my number. Give me a call.
Yes.
And then inshallah we can talk more into detail.
Yes.
And I can guide you. I came into this field after my own father died without life insurance in Annapolis.
I'm sorry about that.
At the age of 45, I was 22 years old. So I lived through this scenario,
Yeah,
and I have seen. So I can give you more explanations, and we can talk more, inshallah.
absolutely. Exactly higher.
Okay. Brother Aziz, who's next one?
Sister Nazish, go ahead. The floor is yours.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Wa alaikum salam.
The question that we had is there an Islamic position that indicates when a husband passes away that the spouse, the wife, and the minor children, before the inheritance is divvied up, that a year's worth of expenses are cut away from the estate of the husband for the spouse and the children before the money is divided up? Does that exist?
Imam, you want to answer that, or?
It's not clear to me, the question.
So brother asked the questions that let's say husband died and the children are minor, and you want to have a saving of total expenses of 1 year that can be utilized to sustain the family in the current situation. So they don't have to move, they don't have to sell, they are living 1 year in the same scenario without having any issues.
To save money for in the
Yeah,
event
and
that,
yes.
Oh, that's fine. That's to saving money is something good to do.
Yeah,
Brother,
but I think he was talking about. I believe what he means is if there is if there has been a savings, like we have an advisement to provide for your family for 1 year, or having a savings to provide their maintenance for 1 year, and you have that 1 year savings, can that be given to the wife first after you pass away your children, or is that
technically,
included?
technically, brother, that wife is going to be the guardian of the children upon death, and she have the right on all your assets. And then if she want to live in the scenario, then if she doesn't have, you do not have to separate the money to separate pool. Whatever assets are there, upon a death of a husband, wife, and all the children will have those assets. And as a guardian and as a minor for the minor children, money will be given to the guardian who will take care of the minor children. So if best suited that they live in the current situations, instead of moving and instead of taking care of it, you can do that.
Yeah, I think the question is clear right now, to keep that money and use for the expenses of the family, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so that's fine. But once the person die, we Islamically we know what is the share of each individual is in the family,
Yes.
whether they are young kids or the wife. So, and the wife in that situation, the wife is in charge. She's responsible, and she can utilize that money, that wealthy and other wealthy. If there is other wealth, she will be in charge and responsible. Since the young children, they cannot take care of themselves, so the mother, she's the one who take care of it. And she, even if her portion of the inheritance is small, she can eat and drink and live with her children while she's taking care of it. She can use the money that her husband left behind. It's not a problem.
Yes.
Jazakallah khair.
Yes.
Jazakallah khair. So we just have probably under 13 minutes left, and so I'll shift back over to some of the questions that were posed in the chat earlier. I think we touched on pretty much a lot of the questions that did come in during the presentations. Were touched on in either directly or indirectly through a lot of the responses that we got so far. So I'll just go over a couple that we would get a little bit more clarification on. There's a direct question to the Imam Mohamed talking about, can we get clarification on the statement of the Prophet ﷺ that the Prophet ﷺ didn't pray janazah on the person with debt?
Even though the hadith is not to the level of authenticity, means that because in the hadith science, when we say sahih, hasan, it has a different terminologies. But the hadith said that when someone died, the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to ask the Sahaba whether this person has a debt or not. If they say he doesn't have it, then he used to lead the janazah prayer. If they say he has a debt, he used to he used to tell the Sahaba to do the janazah prayer. And the whole reason was to just, encourage the believers not to die in a state of debt. But if that happened, the other believers who are able to help and take care of that debt to happen. And it happened in his lifetime. When he say, I'm not going to offer the janazah prayer, one of the Sahaba, because of the money that the person is on, one of the Sahaba say, Ya Rasulullah, I will take care of it.
Yes.
But what happened in his last days, years of the Messenger Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam's life, he said, if someone die and left wealthy, that wealthy is for his family. But if the person left, if he owe money to someone else, he say, I will take care of it. So that means they will, the Messenger Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam will pay that debt from the Baytul Mal, from the money that being collected from the Muslim community, that the government is using for the affairs of the communities. So that was the last statement of the Messenger Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. And now it becomes the responsibility. We don't live as a Muslim according to our Islam. We live according to our cultures, according to our customs, according to what we just find ourselves. When it's to come Islam, it is a responsibility of the government to take care of the affairs of the needy ones, the poor, the orphans, the widows, those who cannot take care of themselves. That's why the Messenger Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said, "Man taraka malan fali ahlihi fali warathati." If someone die and leave a wealthy, it's for his family. But if he leave a dain, if he owe money to someone else, it's my responsibility, and I will take care of it as a leader, as a leader of the Muslim Ummah and the Muslim community at that time. Of course, the situation now is different, but it's a responsibility of the state. If there is a Muslim state who following the Islamic Sharia.
Yes, brother. On the Hadith point of view, that I just on that I talk about is in Ibn Majah, book 15, chapter 12. Hadith number is 2413 about debt. So
Yeah,
if they
that I know the Hadith.
No, I'm just telling the brother that if they want to,
if they want to look,
if they want to look about it and they want to do more research. Recently, that we heard that one of the Imam in Canada, there was a janazah that he says that if the person have a debt and he refused to do it. So there's so many concerns, so many issues on this, but I think we can have it. So.
Okay, so another question going back to the legality and more so also taxes. A question that was posed and it's multidimensional. It goes as follows: what Maryland or federal inheritance tax do I need to be aware of for inheritors in order to maximize the benefits? And also with 401ks, that can pose tax disadvantages for spouse. Do they have to report the income at the end of the year, and for the beneficiary to pay taxes on when he or she would have to distribute wealth to rightful owners? What's the best approach for that designation? Okay.
Yep. I would just quickly advise that you would contact one of the two professionals here, depending upon that specific situation, how much money they have, their assets, and,
yes.
and I think it's more of a question that would be better suited with the individual discussion.
Yes. Oh, one small thing on the 401k, when they have a distribution, they will also send you 1099. So they will also report to the IRS that you are getting distribution. So 401k beneficiary designation supersedes. Again, brother answers such a wonderfully. He says that it's better. Some of the personal questions, if we can ask on an individual basis, so we don't have to. We can get more knowledge before we can give a proper answer to it.
Awesome. And so there's one question. Can you please explain probate?
Okay, probate, simple word, is when somebody passed away and the court have a process of transferring the house, the bank accounts, the cars, the whatever assets they have from the person who already passed away to his wife, his children, his beneficiaries. The whole process, in a simple word, in legal term, it's called probate.
Okay, awesome. And there's also a question about speaking about the needs for advance directive and whether this should be tied into the will in any way.
I'll just quickly state that just to be clear, that the will, an advance directive, a power of attorney, or a living will are separate documents. They're separate. But all of those documents are recommended things that you have in an estate plan. So it's very much advisable when you're going to get your will done that you also make sure that you have a durable power of attorney, which is basically going to give a responsibility given to someone that you designate to take care of your affairs if you can't do those things while you're living, if you become incapacitated. Those things are important. You can designate a person to act as your guardian within your durable powers of attorney. The advance directive, of course, is also important, but these things, I will say, just first, that they are separate estate planning documents, but they are advised, and I believe we do it, and I believe for the Yasir company does recommend that you have a complete plan that includes getting that done.
Brother, a few things I will add on to the advanced medical directive. Number one, it expedites the process of releasing a body from a hospital. It does, on the autopsy or organ donations and all those and taking care of it. Plus, the main thing is on advanced medical directive, where you want to be buried and how you want to be buried. In my scenario, I was 22 when my father died. My family in Pakistan, they forced me to send my father's body to back home. And we had 2 days of discussion and argument and everything. And until the point that I was threatened that, then you are exiled and you can't come, and everybody was fighting. So if this document, I have it, my mother have it, my family have it, everybody dictates that where and how they want to be buried. And if you have this document, nobody can force you where to be buried. So that's why it's very crucial and very important documents to have.
We have a workshop for advance directive at MCC with the attorney the Attorney General of State of Maryland.
Very nice.
2 times. So, and I just want to add what Brother Zia said, that and those questions come a lot to me, even in the masjid, when someone in a life support machine, for example, if you write in your advance directive that you should not, should not use that type of life support, or remove it in a state of this, who can do that, all this, it will make easy for even the family how to handle the whole situation. So it's good to do it.
Absolutely.
And you're also within that directive too, with the healthcare directive, you can designate someone, you're designating someone and to make some of those healthcare decisions if you really can't do it at that state. Certain other healthcare decisions that you can't do on your own.
Exactly.
It does that too.
Jazakumullah khair. And a final question to go ahead, and which I think is probably really well to wrap up this workshop today. The question specifically asked about advice to a person with a parent who doesn't want to leave a will, but the way I'll also pose it to all of the panelists to kind of go one by one to answer, to kind of wrap it up is, your parting advice in terms of emphasizing the importance to our community in prioritizing and preparing a will before their departure from this world. So we'll start with Brother Damani.
Also, I'll go from the legal perspective, and I'll have Imam and others to go from the other Islamic perspective. But if you don't decide how your estate's going to be handled, the state's going to do it. So if you don't do it yourself, you're leaving it to somebody else. And in doing so, they may not treat your heirs and your relatives justly the way that you want. And then, of course, also, they're not going to follow the Islamic guidelines on how your estate's going to be passed on. So that's just not going to happen. So the advice is, if you don't do it, someone else is going to do it, and your people that you're leaving behind may not be happy. And especially when you have children that have to be taken care of, it's your responsibility to have this will done. You have to have it together.
Let me add a little bit on that. We have quite a few people. Have anybody ever went to a government institution, MVA or court, and came out such a pleasantly and happy? Just imagine, take yourself out of the picture and just imagine that your family members, your wife, your children have to go from one office to another office to figure out all those decisions that you know either are scared to do it or did not do it. So it is very, very important on your point that we have a proper plan, we have a proper execution, and we leave our documentations. And again, I will say, you only do it for the sake of Allah, following Prophet Muhammad SAW, and if you love your family. If you don't love your family, you don't have to, then you leave them in a such a mess that they can handle themselves.
And even with that, just quickly, you will cause, as I've seen before, you will have fights that don't need to happen. When you have people fighting over who's going to be executors, who's going to be responsible for things, and it's unnecessary.
We have
that problem.
Yeah, we have seen fights even on janaza that in a family that, all right, my father and mother want us to bury in a certain cemetery, or they want us to take it back home or here. So that's why it's very important to have all those documents drawn. I've been witnessing life insurance is tough to sell. Because we talk about life and death, and this is even tougher that we have seen so many. When we put the family together and try to decide what we need to do, then everybody will have a different answer on it.
Yeah, I small presentation I did, I put that question, why do we need to write a will? And I give a couple of answers, and one is to make easy for your, a family not to fight over your either janaza or over your your wealth that you left behind. I'm dealing with a lot of family who is fighting the wealth that the parents they left, and the children, they don't even talk to each other right now. So if you write a will, things will be very clear, and it will be easy for the family. And also it's a protection of the rights of, if you owe somebody or somebody entrusts you something, you must make very clear. It will be easy for you in your grave. So, and that's why the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, it is not suitable a believer to sleep more than 3 nights without his will under his pillow. So it's the sunnah of our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also commanded us, ala al-muttaqin, haqqan ala al-muttaqin. Allah says it's a right upon those who are righteous to write their wills. So inshallah, let's do it and take advantage. Alhamdulillah, we have professionals who are able to help us, and jazakumullahu khairan, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept our efforts. And thank you so much.
Jazakallah khairan. Jazakallah khairan, Imam. And everybody, such a pleasure, and hopefully we answer some questions. And if we did not answer, you can reach Brother Damani, me, anybody, even Imam, and we are more than happy to help you. Our cell phone is there, phone numbers are there. It's truly a pleasure, and thank you, everybody.
Alhamdulillah. Jazakumullah khair, everyone. Really appreciate everyone's time for coming out and spending this 2 hours with us on this Saturday morning and participating. We truly do appreciate it. And just like Brother Yasir said, I will be sending out the recording, everyone's contact information, and a survey that I would hope everyone, and I'd ask that everyone please fill out to give us your feedback on today's workshop in an email that I will be sending out to all the registrants, inshallah. With that, I want to thank everyone again for tuning in. I hope to see all 50 of you all next week for our continued session with Tafsir with Imam Abdullahi at the same time at 11 a.m. So please make sure, if you're not signed up for our weekly emails, to go to the MCC website and sign up so you can get updated on that. This workshop was because of a conversation that we had in the Tafsir class. So, just an opportunity for us to connect on a weekly basis, although we may be physically apart during this challenging past year that we've had, inshallah. Imam, I'll turn it over to you to give us a closing dua. And
Brother Aziz, just a small thing. Brother Damani, I think you put one extra 6 in your phone number.
No, I did. I corrected it too. I sent it again.
Okay.
And I'll also
Yes,
I'll put all the contact information in the email.
Okay.
So we can make sure to check it for error, inshallah.
All right.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Thank you.
سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر وصلى الله على خير خلقه محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين وجزاكم الله خيرا والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته.